Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is the April the 20th, 2006. I'm Bob Andrade, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in these conflicts. Today I'm here at the museum along with fellow volunteers Bonnie Kirklow and Lou Boyles. Today we have the honor and the privilege of interviewing James Kemp over here and Frank Middleton over here. Okay, so we're going to talk to them about that and a lot of other things, and it's nice to have you here. The reason that we have them both together here because they correct me if I'm wrong, but because they both flew P-47s in the Pacific.
In the same squadron.
And the same squadron, and as we go along, we're going to find out how that happened. But for right now, we're just going to start with a few basics. Again, I haven't done too much of the ones with two people. So we'll start out. We're going to start out with Kemp, okay? Okay, Kemp. Can you tell me where you were born and raised?
I was born in Arkansas, but I was raised in California. Spent my youth and my later on as well in California.
Whereabouts in California?
Los Angeles area.
Los Angeles.
When it was an area then too, mostly. If you were around in those days, you remember there was plenty of land and plenty of places to go, and great for children and all that.
Okay, what school did you go to?
I went to Washington High School, and I went to Whittier College.
Whittier College?
The war came.
Whittier.
You're from Whittier? The war ended my Whittier business.
Okay, then you went to college. What did you want to? What was your major in college?
History and just was looking around to find out what I was really interested in. History seemed like a great thing to study, but I was waiting to see something would fit out of science, because science was really becoming a boomer in those days. At that time.
Okay, now how about your parents? Where's your father from?
My father was, I could say, a victim of World War I. He was shot up pretty badly in one of the skirmishes in the troops, and he came home wounded, and he was pretty much that way until he came time to cash him in.
How about your mother?
Mother's been in California most of her life, and she still is. I have to take that back. She's no longer in California, but I have many relatives, and my mother, and my wife, is a California girl, and still is.
Another, you consider yourself a California then?
Pretty much.
Okay, and now you probably, like a lot of other people, went through the Depression. How did you make it through the Depression? Your family?
Lean. A good chance to work hard and meet a lot of people and to experiment in different kinds of work.
Did your father have a job?
When I was in about the eighth grade, he passed away mostly from his wartime injuries, World War I. So good jobs are hard to get, but you can find things if you really got out there and rooted it around.
Okay, I'd like to turn to Frank. I'm gonna ask you the same questions. Okay, where were you brought up?
Urbana, Illinois. Born and raised there. And that is, of course, the location of the University of Illinois. I started university in 1940. and was one of the fans of Charles Lindbergh, who of course was going around the country arguing against our involvement in the war. I knew in my mind that Roosevelt, some way or other, was going to get us into the war. So after my freshman year, I had a chance to get a good paying job on the New York Central Railroad, and I took that job knowing that we would soon have war. I was always a great fan of the idea of flying. So the first thought that came to me was I sure didn't want to carry a rifle and go through trenches. This was a chance to learn how to fly. So Chanute Air Force Base was 15 miles north of Ravenna, and I went up there and asked it how to get into the Aviation Cadets.
Was this before the war?
No, this is after Pearl Harbor.
Okay.
This was in March, after Pearl Harbor, February or March. And so they gave me the written exam, which I, of course, passed with my education. And physical, flunked it. You aren't heavy enough. So I spent a week eating as much as I could, went back to be weighed again. Sorry, you aren't heavy enough. Did that another week. Sorry, you aren't heavy enough. About the third time there, this sergeant said, "You really want in, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, I want in." And he said, he whispered in my ear, he said, "Bend your knees a little." And then he announced out loud, "Let's recheck your height." And so they rechecked my height. Okay, you're heavy enough. So that's how I got into the cadets.
Okay, another question we'd like to ask people is, like, you just mentioned that you saw something coming, and so were both of you, I'm talking both of you now, both of you aware what was going on in Europe prior to Poland being invaded?
Oh, yes. Yes.
You were very much aware. How about, were you aware of what was happening in China?
Not as much, I wasn't.
No, not
just
so much.
a little bit, but then not to the extent that Europe.
Right, because a lot of average people say the same thing. Even though the Japanese attacked China in 1937, the average person knew nothing about what was going on over there. Didn't know where it was.
Of course, that was true even on the bombing of Pearl Harbor. A lot of people, Pearl Harbor, never heard of it. Where is it?
I was working as a playground director on Saturdays and Sundays, and the day of Pearl Harbor, these four little Japanese kids came running up, jumping up and down, saying, "The Japs bombed Pearl Harbor." And he just let it go and running around and happy and singing and bouncing around. And repeated that, and then pretty soon one of their older brothers came down and took them home, and there wasn't any more of the free.
Yeah, that's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yes,
Because
it is.
it was not the people that really hated the Japanese were the American Japanese that lost everything in a matter of minutes.
Mhm.
Everything they had worked for.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, then now I think we're going to try to do this collectively. Okay, I'll ask the major questions, and you guys turn in on it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then. No, he said he told how he got in. Now, how about you? Did you ever want to fly before? Or, did you think about flying, or fell in love with flying, or have an experience that made you think about flying?
I made model airplanes and flying models, and I really got the bug then. And I hung around the airport, used to be on Western Avenue in L.A., and found some odds and ends I could do and get a little flying time. Someone would take me up if I did some, wiped out the windshields and that kind of thing. But that really did it. I was, after flying out there, the Cessnas and some other plane was around there and not being used very much, and a wealthy gentleman from out there in that area decided it was a good thing for kids to do, and so I can't remember his name now. nice. But we kept the plane in good shape in his office and the hangar and everything, and we got a little flying time. So got the buggy early and pretty heavy.
And so that was your first, and you fell in love with flying then at that time, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and now the war's here now, and at Pearl Harbor, how old were you still in school in Pearl Harbor?
Yes. I was still in school in Pearl Harbor. The school for young men practically stopped, a small school. So many of them left, and there just wasn't enough activity. They were having trouble keeping the professors, the male professors, and they were getting a lot of them got a commission in the Navy. Many of them were going that way. So school was kind of slowing down, and I kept getting the bug and reading it, what was going on. And I tried to enroll, and they told me what you had to do, so I got some books and did some reading and got my height and weight and everything, and so it was a little bit different than some of the others.
So what
I
year?
had the bug.
So what? And then did you go right to a cadet? Become cadet first?
Yes, it was down in L.A. at where the red car ran in and down below, and there was upstairs. There were all these young fellas there, and they're trying to find out how they could get in. That was their whole life, and they did a good job teaching us and helping us do it. And it took about, I think it took the test a couple, 3 times before I passed.
Okay, so okay, now both of you are now cadets, right?
Actually, back in those days, you started out as aviation students.
Okay.
That's right.
And as aviation students, you got basic training, the old original basic. And then I was sent to Carroll College, Waukesha, Wisconsin, because I didn't have any courses in meteorology or physics on my record. And they sent me up there to go to school. And I was up there 3 months. And of course got those university credits applied to my U of I career when I got back into school after the war was over. And then you didn't become a cadet until you actually went through classification center and passed classification center, and then you became an aviation cadet.
Then where did they transfer you to at that time?
Well, I was classified for pilot training.
Okay. Where was that at?
San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. What was the name of that field? San Antonio. There's about 3 of them over there right now, I think. That's where a lot of the, also one of the biggest. I think San Antonio is one of the biggest. It still is. And how about you? Where did you get your flight training?
I was lucky. I went to Ryan at Tucson. Ryan made the airplane, and they had very fine instructors, and we were there until it was partly by age and partly by our time in the service, and what was the other criteria they looked for? Anyway, they sent us to Ryan Field, and with civilian instructors, both flying and other subjects, and we got about it seems like 40 hours or something like that, including some aerobatics and everything. So it didn't reduce my desire at all. It was just a lot more interest and more drive in it.
Now, did both of you start out with was it the Stearman?
No.
Which would you start out with?
The PT-19. What they call it?
What, the Valti, was it? No, that was
PT-19
So was that
Fairchild,
Ryan?
I think, made it. Wasn't it?
I forget.
It's single wing.
Single wing.
It was Ryan,
It was
wasn't
Ryan.
P-19.
Okay.
Open cockpit, naturally.
Open cockpit.
Open pocket.
Yeah, we had one out there, you saw that, didn't you?
Low wing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? What was your first, your solo?
In the service,
Yeah, when you first soloed in the service.
it was Orion.
Same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. It was open cockpit. It was fun airplane.
Did you ever fly the Stearman?
No.
Now that's very unusual.
That Stearman looked good. They were moving it around in the sky.
Yellow Peril.
Yellow Peril. We weren't at Ryan. We weren't in the service. He was less than he was. We had sent us home one time to get all our things in order, but they were having some problems getting their graduates to be taken at that time. Things were slow. They were had to get going to the Air Force. But they had cleared that up, and then we went to Bakersfield from Ryan. I went to Bakersfield, which became Army in a hurry. Much different, but very good flying.
Now, how about advanced training? What did you fly in? Was it AT-6?
Yeah.
Of course, the BT-13 in between.
Yeah, that's the vibrator, the faulty vibrator.
You were around those.
Why did he get that name?
I don't know.
Okay, now you've advanced and you became, when you got your wings, did you become a officer at that time?
Yes. Yes. Commissioned as second lieutenant.
Okay, and how about you?
Did you get commissioned after you did your advanced training?
Yep.
Right away?
Yes.
My memory is just about where it was when I arrived here today.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was part of graduation from the AT-6.
Well, the AT-6, but I was talking about
Became second. Well, some became flight officers instead
Okay,
of.
We'll back up a little bit. When did you get? We'll use the reference to. When did you get your wings?
when graduation from advanced.
Do you remember what year that was?
44. We were both 44s.
Both 44. Okay.
44Ds.
Were you both on 44D?
Mm-hmm.
Not together, but.
Did you know each other at all?
Not then.
Okay, now you got your wings, and your first assignment is where? Go ahead, Kemp.
Louisiana at Baton Rouge. Go down for extensive training and really taking a hard look at you. Make sure that with all kinds of tests, make sure that we're the right people. Or they didn't buy a pig in a poke, or whatever that is. But they treated us like you're going to be lucky if you live. They were fair, but it was mostly test and instruction and test. We weren't flying at all. In my case, I don't know about Chuck.
Yeah, how about you? What was your first assignment after you got your wings?
Well, the first assignment was still right there at Eagle Pass, Texas, where you went from the AT-6 after you got your wings to 10 hours in the P-40.
40.
And actually, I got sick at my graduation party, something I ate at that picnic that they threw for the graduation party. Ended up in the hospital for 2 or 3 days. And when I got out of the hospital, I went out to the flight line to see my instructor, and he said, have you had any cockpit time in the P-40? And I said, no, I haven't had a chance. And he said, well, you go get your chute and go get in that P-40 sitting there. And so I got my chute and went out, and he was standing there by the plane when I walked out. And I climbed in, and he reached in and started it up and said, okay, get this bird in the air, they get hot sitting here on the ground. So my cockpit time came in the air.
You did get a cockpit checkout, didn't you?
My checkout all came after I got up in the air, about 10,000
No
feet.
blindfold check?
Huh?
No blindfold check?
Now that, because that P-40 was completely different than that SNJ.
Oh, yes.
I mean, AT-6.
It's a heck of a lot faster.
Faster
You realize how
going
many?
up and down.
Do you realize when the Flying Tigers they made their transition, how many they ground looped, especially the Navy guys were flying boats. They ground looped a lot of those P-40s in training, the AVG. Okay, now you've done your training there. Now you're getting ready to go to combat. You're doing a lot of training in the States in gunnery and.
Oh, we had a lot of training. Bruning, no, from Eagle Pass, Texas, I went to Dalhart, Texas, and started flying P-47s in Dalhart. And then our group was formed, and we went to Bruning, Nebraska, and we knew each other then.
How did you guys meet? Sounds
Well,
like a love story, doesn't it?
we were, well, we I don't know, we just became friends in the P-47 transition prior to the fact that the 507th was organized, formed. And of course we were organized and formed in Europe. Most of the flights over there and helping bombers and everything was done by the P-51, because they had a longer range than the P-47. The P-47 drank gasoline so rapidly that the 51s did most of the bomber escort work. And so this is when they came up with the idea that the P-47 actually is a better plane, a more versatile plane, so we need to make it longer range. So that's when they started working on the idea of the P-47N. The P-47N was, each wing was a foot longer, the fuselage was a foot longer, and we could carry 720 gallons of gasoline internally, plus, of course, wing drop tanks, or a drop tank off the belly. So the N, we were originally, our group was supposed to go to Iwo Jima.
Well, you're in Europe, right? You started out in Europe, didn't you? Did you say you started out in Europe?
No, we started out in the United States.
No, what I mean, I thought you went in the 8th Air Force, or.
Well, we ended up in the 8th. Ended up in the 8th, way back after the war in Europe was over.
Okay, that's when Doolittle brought the 8th to
Japan, or over to
Okinawa.
Pacific, yeah. But we were originally scheduled to go to Iwo, but because of bugs in the end that hadn't been worked out, they sent 51s to Iwo Jima, and that 51 group, while we were on a ship going across from Seattle, we got word that the Japs came out of caves on Iwo and had killed 26 of those P-51 pilots, which would have been our group if they hadn't had those bugs in the P-47N. So
one of our docents down in the hangar where you're at, where I met you, he was one of those P-51 pilots. Flew out of the first group to, and that was his first combat was at Iwo Jima. His name was Roy June.
well,
Okay, then you're.
so we went to Iwo, which of course didn't become U.S. property or U.S. available until April, May. Ernie Pyle was killed in the middle of April on the invasion of Iwo Jima. It was a small island, about 6 miles long, and just barely over a mile wide.
But it had a field on it.
And they had a runway on it. And the runway was just a mile. And the P-47 with a full load needed every inch of that. we had 51s on the same island. 51s would taxi out 2 at a time, turn onto the runway 2 at a time, gun it and take off. We had to taxi out, go clear to the end of the runway, lock our brakes, get it clear into water injection.
I was gonna say that.
And after water injection took over, then you let go of the brakes. And if we had 100 miles an hour when we got to the tower in the middle, we were supposed to stay with our takeoff. If it was 99 miles an hour or less, we were supposed to slam on the brakes and see if we could get stopped. And we had, 1 or 2 planes a week that weren't getting into the air, and they were going over the edge of the cliff. Actually, the pilots got out. They lived through it. Republic sent an expert test pilot out, gathered us all together, lectured us as to the fact that, okay, now in order to help streamline the plane, go ahead and close the cowl flaps just before you take off. Don't forget to open them up after you get in the air. And the degree of flaps to use and all the settings. And then he was going to demonstrate for us, and he was killed on takeoff. So they didn't send out anybody else to tell us how to do it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes me think now. You're ready for takeoff. What 10 degrees of flaps for takeoff, or
Oh, golly, I think we used about 20 degrees.
for takeoff? Yeah.
You remember, Jim?
But you did close your cowl flaps, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then open them up right when you got airborne.
Yeah.
Okay. Then now, were you in the same area there?
I was. He got there quicker than I did because I had a whole lifetime before.
We were going over there on a troop ship, and our planes were being taken over by a carrier. The carrier got into a bad storm. Some of the planes broke loose and were damaged and everything, and they ended up having to shove about 12 planes overboard. And so as we were approaching Hawaii, they called us all together, told us that story, and said that they had replacement planes on Hawaii, and they had figured out that there were enough islands to be able to island hop and get across the Pacific. So they wanted 12 volunteers. And I was one of the first with my hand up. I'd had enough of that boat. And so 12 of us were taken off the ship in Hawaii, and we picked out a brand new airplane and spent 10 days breaking it in. The reason it took so long was that, of course, they, in order to keep from having damage from the salt water spray and everything, they had pickled those engines with a grease or something rather, and you'd, during this 10-day period, we'd take off, we'd be in the air about an hour, and you couldn't even see out of the windshield because of all the grease and oil on it. So we would take 2 or 3 flights in the morning, short flights, and they'd clean the windshield and do it again, and then we had the afternoon free for that 10-day period. And then the 12 of us, with a B-25 to be the navigation for us, started out across the Pacific. And of course, flying that jug, that P-47N was the first fighter plane with automatic pilot in it. And flying that jug slow enough to stay behind the B-25, flying as fast as it could go, was a pain in the neck. It was real tedious. We landed at Johnson Island, our first island, and Majuro Island, and then we stayed on Majuro for quite a while because, I guess because of the fact that Hiroshima that hadn't yet been taken, and the runway built and all this. So then from Majuro we went to Saipan,
Magma.
Then hopped over Tinian because Tinian had longer runways.
I thought you were gonna say better food or something like that.
And then a flight into Hiroshima.
Okay, then did you make any runs into Iwo Jima at all then? You'd never,
You won't know.
yeah, never made any runs over there. Okay, then, and now how did you get over there?
He stayed on the ship when I got off.
And I stayed on the ship. A couple of things. The engine stopped at pure black. I mean black out there one night, somewhere halfway between nowhere and somewhere, and we couldn't get it going. And we had two little, there were two little escort vessels that decided they were going to defend us because there was something bad out there, and they dropped a few cans out there and it scared the living daylights out of everybody. I mean, we were scared.
Shakes the ship up, doesn't it?
Shakes it up, and it was just we were there about 3 or 4 days before they got the thing running. It was just this special little, I don't know what kind of, it was,
So then you got by ship, you got to the Jima, right?
Hiroshima.
Yeah.
yeah,
I-A-Shima.
I-A.
That's how it's spelled, I-A.
IA, okay, IA Shima. Okay, now you both got there. You're both now on that field, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
he was on the field and I was on the boat, sitting out there going like this all night, and the Japanese were flying over and dropping these something on us and scaring the living daylights out of us. So the second day, the ones that couldn't, didn't have the right things to, or the right, I don't know what it was. They weren't behaving like they should or whatever, but they said, finally, we fellas that can swim in and pass a test. You swim around the boat here and you can swim on in. So several of us were swimming in.
So were the airplanes on the boat too?
Not on this
No.
boat, no.
They gone over there they transported the boats on something else and
On a carrier, yes.
probably cheap carrier, huh?
But unloaded with a great big crane.
Right. Okay, now what was your both of you are now on
I-A.
IH. Now,
Yeah.
now, what was your first combat? Did you go your first combat mission? What was it like? Your first combat mission?
Well, my first mission, I didn't even get credit for mission. It was escort work on Navy or ships of various kinds. And for some reason or other, we wouldn't get credit for a mission unless we fired our guns or were shot at. And so we'd be up there for hours serving as escort to keep the kamikazes away. And if we didn't fire our guns, no mission.
I don't know that.
That was easy to take care of. You got a finger and fire your
How about
guns.
you? Yeah, same thing.
Same thing that applied, yeah.
And then
My first real mission was, I forget, I think maybe it's about July 1. A weather plane came back and reported having spotted a Japanese carrier up on the coast of Kyushu. And so they called out 12 of our names to report to operations, and I was one of the 12 that was called, and we got there and were told about this carrier bit. We weren't told, we were told that we had 2 500-pound bombs, but we weren't told as to what kind of fuses they had on them. And we went up along the coast of Kyushu looking for this carrier without any luck, and it got dark, and it was time to head back home because that was I thought a terrible plane to fly at night because of the fact that the bubble canopy picked up your instrument lights. So the bubble canopy was just a complete reflection.
Ever happy were you?
And so anyway, we had also a squadron of Corsairs, Marine Corsairs, were on the same mission with rockets while we had the bombs. And the ship couldn't be found, and so we picked out a radar station at the tip end of Kyushu to hit it, knock it out as our target. And I was in my bombing run when I saw a Corsair coming in from my right. We were practically on collision course. And I chopped the throttle off and dropped some flaps and everything else to slow down, because I didn't want to have to circle around and go back up and come down again. And the Corsair fired its rockets over the target and then blew up practically in front of me to the left. And of course I was getting lower and lower all the time with these 500-pound bombs, and I figured that surely with the fact that we were looking for a carrier, that it would have a 2 or 3 second fuse on it, because the idea was to skip bomb if you're going for a ship, to drop your bombs short of where skip 2 or 3 second fuse. The fuse was instantaneous, and I was practically on top of the ground when I dropped those 2 500-pound bombs. I was completely out of control for a while.
You didn't drop both at the same time, did you?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it sent you upstairs, huh?
And it blew out my hydraulic system. I had hydraulic fluid all over the cockpit. I was a smoker back in those days. Sniff it, taste it. Will this blow up if I light a cigarette? And finally I decided, I'm not sure I'm going to get this bird back anyway, so I lit it up. It didn't blow up.
So did you get, of course you dropped you, well, getting home, you probably
Came home at night.
They just gravity on your gear, right? You just dropped.
Gravity take care of the gear, but gravity wouldn't handle the flaps or the brakes.
You didn't have emergency.
I came in hot. I thought I was going to have to ground loop to the end, but I managed to
The brakes held, huh?
get. I guess there was a little bit of braking power left, but it was quite a ride.
How was your first combat?
My first combat was they had a they were trying to get some time. I'd been having some sinus trouble and ear trouble and everything else. Every time I changed altitude, I had a problem. It ended my flying right then. But I got around to figuring out how to do it. Go in low and stay low, and dropped a few bombs, but and lived through it.
What was your target that day?
It was an old, some kind of old Japanese, or could have been from the island people there. I think it'd been sunk or beached years ago or a long time ago or something like. And one of the men had a good idea that we could. It was good practice, so we had to go back anyway. So we tried that. I don't think it was a splendid example of what we could do.
But this, you say this wasn't a Podomo?
Yeah.
Now, how did he get all those planes?
Yeah.
This was after the 2 atom bombs were dropped.
Okay.
I got to see the second one go off. Our mission on that day was to strafe an airfield on Shikoku Island. And I don't know that all of us was told, but that the flight leaders were told to stay at least 100 miles away from 3 different cities. And Nagasaki was one of them. And actually, at the time that bomb went off, we were about 125 miles due east of Nagasaki. And we all knew the war was over, seeing that thing. And then we...
You didn't get any of the vibration from that, did you?
Oh, no, 125 miles? No.
Not enough to...
Mm-mm.
But you knew what it was.
We knew what it was because of having heard about the first one.
Okay.
And it was after, like I said, a day or two after that they decided to fly this mission up over Korea, which was going to take every ounce of gas in that plane plus the belly tank, because that was going to be an 8 or 9 hour mission. And Perdomo got those flights on that mission. Our squadron, unfortunately, was assigned the duty of flying top cover. So all the fun was going on down below us. Perdomo got ace 5, and we, as a group, got the Presidential Unit Citation for that mission.
Now, at that time, of course, the stories come out at the end of the war, you know, were they really, were a lot of the aviation people, you know, would they keep fighting, you know, even after they surrendered? Because there was a lot of people that just kept fighting no matter what, you know. And was it those planes were up there, they were just suicide, were they? Were they just on a mission? The planes that he shot down. The war's almost over, right?
Well, the war was not officially over. Actually, as I understand it, where I understood it back at that time, was that after the second atom bomb, Japan tried to negotiate peace through Russia. And Russia had not yet formally declared war against them. So Russia held them off long enough to formally declare war. And so during this 3 or 4 day delay period, we continued to fly missions. And that was when we had that flight up over Korea.
Oh, that's interesting there. Okay, now the war's over. Where were you at? Were you at Iwo Jima when the war ended, or were you in Korea?
We had 3 fighter groups over there. One fighter group was going to be sent to Japan. One fighter group was going to be broken up. One fighter group was going to be dissolved with the pilots going wherever. Our group was the one picked that was broken up with a choice of jobs to fill over there. I picked, in order to get some twin engine time, I picked a troop carrier outfit flying freight between Manila and Okinawa and Japan.
The C-50, I mean, C-50, I mean, C-47s?
No C-46s.
Okay.
With that great big tail, landing one of those things in a crosswind, it took pilot and co-pilot both standing on a rudder.
Yeah, have you seen I'm changing the subject a little bit, but have you seen the China Doll C-46 they have over here? China Doll is over Camarillo.
Okay.
And it comes in every so often, C-46. Yeah. Okay, now now how about you? Where were you? You were the same place when the war ended?
No, I have been fighting sinus and ear problems for about a year. And almost every time I go up and fly, after any change of altitude, it kept being a problem. So we kept working with this flight surgeon, and he finally said, "I'm getting tired of you. I don't know if you're getting tired of me or not." He says, "You better think about going home or going back." This was after the second bomb had been dropped, and I was getting along very well, and one of the superior officers decided that I should take another crack at it, so I took another crack at it and popped him again. And then I left there as a wounded duck, and the war ended shortly after that, and I was stuck really behind the veterans, I mean the soldiers that were going back. They were just stuck in it, as well should be. But anyway, it took me about 6 months, almost 5 months to get home from there, and I was going by plane the whole way. Things were really in pandemonium wherever that is.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're back in the States now, and you got nothing. You guys didn't stay in. You got out, right? Both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay. Now let's a little bit about your. Don't mind the expression. Your love life. Did you get married before you left over there, or when you got back?
I got married on a 3-day pass when I was at Carroll College in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And this was right after they permitted cadets to be married. Up until that time, you couldn't get into cadets if you were married. And so I was married back in May of 1943.
That's when she had that great job, wasn't it?
And so my wife, of course, finished school while I was in training, and joined me in Eagle Pass just as I graduated. And she was given a set of little wings to go with my big wings. So I got home and had a wife and a son waiting for me. I had a GI Bill, 4 years of college available with that GI Bill, and with the credits I had and some courses I tested and passed and everything, I completed my undergraduate degree and 3 years of law school, all in a total of 3.5 years.
Okay, where did you practice?
Practice, real estate, probate, and taxation.
Where at?
Champaign, Illinois.
Illinois, okay. And how many children did you have altogether?
Just the 2 sons. They each had 2 sons. My oldest son was born while I was overseas, or right before I went overseas. Retired after 31 years with the FBI 5 or 6 years ago. And he is now employed by the FBI on a contract basis and
Okay.
being sent first one place and then another.
You got any grandchildren?
I got 7 grandchildren and 2 great-granddaughters.
That's great. How about you, sir?
We got married when I got home. Finally got a ship that's going one way all the way. And I went into, before we got married, I went in to talk to the Air Force about what possibly I could do, and they told me in no uncertain terms there wasn't any career there for me. They had a lot of me's walking around in different places. So I said, well, I'll go. And I had a lot of friends that I wonder what in the world they're doing. They were so happy and having a good time, and they'd all joined the fire department. And I mean, really, they joined the fire department. There must have been 15 or 20 of them. Most of them I played football with in high school and college. And these go to the beach and enjoying everything like California is supposed to be. And then it time to go, had to go home and get ready for this or that, and I said, geez, I'm tired of this. And so I joined the fire department, and I really enjoyed it. But I soloed off of a building downtown LA in about 3/4 to 4/4, about 3.5 years after that. and I really busted the back. Finally did a lot of surgeries, and it didn't work too well. So I started studying appraising and became a senior appraiser, and started doing helping people that are trying to buy a bank or something. Go in and look at the portfolio and make an estimate of the value.
Okay, have you, how many kids have you got?
I've got had two. One died, and I have a son who's an attorney. And that's.
Yeah, now, okay, how did you guys get back together again? Did you keep in contact with each other, or?
He owed me money.
Okay, that's a good reason.
Yeah, we were good friends, and
Yeah.
we kept in contact, and we
Yeah.
came out to California to visit them, and way back when.
Way back.
Well, that's great. This is perfect here because it's just working out real good. And thank you very, very much.